Perfect characters are easy to love simply because we can admire them without ever having to worry about their flaws. They give us a form of fulfillment, a fantasy to escape into, and sometimes that's exactly what I want. After a long day, it feels good to just watch someone untouchable handle everything like it's nothing. But the problem with being perfect is that the novelty wears off quickly. Once you've seen it, there is not much left to discover. Today, I want to look at two characters who start out this way, Gojo and Jinshi, two characters I genuinely love, both written as if they were perfect beings, but while one stays locked in that perfection, the other manages to escape it, and in doing so, becomes someone much more interesting. So first, what do we even mean when we say a character is perfect? To me, a perfect character is someone written to excel at everything that defines them. They look flawless, they act flawless, and the story itself bends to make sure we see them as flawless. Maybe they are the strongest fighter, the smartest person in the room, the most attractive, or the most admired. Whatever their domain is, they dominate it without effort. And usually, the narrative supports that image. Other characters are stunned by them, rival gets crushed by them, and even their flaws are the kind that somehow make them more appealing, like being too mysterious, too humble, or too selfless. In other words, perfect characters are built for admiration, they are wish fulfillment. They give us something to look at and think, wow, I wish I could be like that. And that's exactly why we love these kind of characters, because for a while, they give us the fantasy of certainty. We don't have to worry about them failing, we can just enjoy the spectacle of someone operating at a level we know we will never reach. But once you understand what makes them perfect, you also start to see why that same perfection becomes a trap. They stop surprising you, and if a character can't surprise you anymore, how much longer can they hold your attention? When I think of a perfect character, Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen is probably the first name that comes to mind. He's tall, attractive, charismatic, and ridiculously overpowered, and that is exactly why people love him as a character. You don't have to worry about whether he will figure things out, or if he will survive, because you already know he will. Now, in the manga, that does somewhat change, and I will talk about that too, but there won't be any spoilers. First, the focus will be on the Gojo that we know in the anime. Now, as I said, Gojo is presented as a perfect being. Perfection is so absolute that it leaves very little room for growth. His battles don't feel tense in the way most fights do, because you never really believe he's in danger. His personality quirks, like being cocky or playful, don't feel like flaws that could hurt him. Even the darker side of his character, like how detached he can be, never really challenge his image. And the longer you watch, the more you realize how limiting that is. Because when a character is defined by being untouchable, the story has to bend around them. Either they overshadow everyone else, or the narrative has to keep inventing reasons to take them off the board so other characters can shine. That's exactly what we see at the end of season 2, with Gojo being sealed away. It was a necessity. If you were always present, there'd be no room for tension, and no room for anyone else to matter. But how long can you stay invested in a character who never changes? It's great at first, because it grabs you instantly, but over time, you're watching to see how the character will perform the role they've already mastered. It's entertaining, sure, but it's predictable, and predictability, at least for me, is one of the most boring elements an anime can present. Obviously, by saying any of these, I don't mean that I hate Gojo. I really like his character, but I wish there was more to him than what we see at the start. However, his popularity is exactly what made it hard to make him feel real. Gege didn't want to break the illusion, because that illusion is what the fans fell in love with. If you give Gojo real flaws, if you let him fail in a way that feels permanent, you risk making him less of the untouchable figure people idolize. So the best way to deal with that was just to remove him from the story rather than put him in the center. And this isn't just the case with Gojo. We had so many characters like this over the years. I think Solo Leveling is the best recent example of a perfect character. Jinwoo is a bit different in the sense that he didn't start out perfect, but the story evolved in a way where his perfection became the center of everything. Any other character lost importance simply because there was no logical reason to have them. That doesn't make a story less enjoyable by any means, but it does make it less memorable. And memorability is something I find really important. For example, I had so much fun watching The Misfit of the Demon King Academy. Anos just obliterating everyone in his path was really fun for 12 episodes straight. But when season 2 came around, I didn't care anymore. I'd already seen everything the show had to offer. Now I know some people are going to disagree here. Some of you might say, that's the point. I don't want flaws. I just want to watch someone be cool. And that is fine. There is nothing wrong with that kind of escapism. But for me, if I'm going to stick with a story for more than just one season, I want substance. I want a kind of character who can hold my attention, not just because they are untouchable, but because they change the more I get to know them. And that is exactly where Jinshi comes in. At first, he looks like just another perfect character. Beautiful, flawless, untouchable, but instead of staying locked in that image, the story slowly starts peeling it back, showing the cast of perfection and giving us something much deeper to hold on to. When Jinshi first enters the palace house in the Apothecary Diaries, the narrative almost pauses for him. Servants freeze when he walks by, conversation hush, even Mao Mao jokes that his face alone could start a war. And in that moment, kind of believe her. He's portrayed as someone beyond ordinary people, someone you can't help but admire. And I really like that at first. There is something satisfying about seeing a character be like that. It's the same thrill you get from watching Gojo flatten curses with ease, or Ano snap his fingers and rewrite reality. But Jinshi doesn't stay there, because the longer you spend with him, the more obvious it becomes that his perfection is something constructed. He has to be flawless, because anything less would mean losing the power that image gives him. And that is the turn that makes him so compelling. Gojo is written to be untouchable, but Jinshi only appears untouchable. What looks like natural grace is actually armor. What feels like charm is really strategy. Despite what we thought at the start, his beauty doesn't make life easier for him. It makes it way harder, because it traps him in expectations that no one could possibly live up to. And once that clicked for me, I couldn't stop noticing the cracks. For Jinshi, being beautiful, elegant, and untouchable is a cage. People don't see him. They see the image, the prince they want him to be, and the more he leans into that image, the harder it becomes to live with. I think that is why his character works so well. He's written as someone who knows exactly how much effort it takes to look flawless, and that effort is what makes him interesting. For me, that is the difference between a character like Gojo and a character like Jinshi. Gojo's perfection is effortless. It's just who he is, and the story bends around that. But Jinshi's perfection is heavy and fragile. It's something he can't keep up forever, even though he tries. And watching those cracks form, watching that illusion peel back piece by piece, is what makes him feel alive instead of static. And once you see through that image, Jinshi becomes even more compelling. Because suddenly you're watching a person under pressure, someone who's tired, someone who's insecure, someone who's scared of being seen for who he really is. And personally, that's when I stopped admiring him from a distance and started actually caring about him. It's such a clever move in the writing because it doesn't reject the fantasy at the start. It lets you enjoy it. It gives you that beautiful, untouchable figure you expect. And then it slowly turns the illusion against itself. And by the time you realize what it's doing, you are hooked. Because now there is something to lose. Now there is something human. That's why Jinshi never bored me the way other perfect characters sometimes do. He wasn't stuck being one-dimensional. He was allowed to evolve by letting his mess slip just enough to show the cast of perfection. And that is a story I will always find more memorable. At the end of the day, this isn't really just about Gojo or Jinshi. It's about why we care about characters in the first place. Because stories aren't just entertainment. The ones that last shows us something about ourselves. Perfect characters are fun because they give us certainty. They let us escape into a fantasy where nothing can go wrong. And sometimes that's exactly what we need. But the characters who last, the ones we think about years later, are the ones who remind us of the messiness we actually lived through. That is the value of rich character writing. It gives us someone to understand, someone we can feel with. And when that happens, the story stops being just a story. It becomes a mirror. That's why Jinshi hit me so hard, because at the end of the day, he wasn't a perfect being. Not even close. If you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see how Mao Mao brings the same kind of depth to the story in her own way, click here. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.